Hello everyone and welcome to Now You're Playing with Power, a Nintendo podcast. My name is NBZ and this, my friends, is the bicentennial. I'm trying to think of the word for 20 that's really complicated and fancy, but I can't come up with one. It's our double digit 2-second version.
I can't think
thing.
of the word. There is a word.
There's probably a special word. You know, you can. How about you tweet us? Tell us about that. And joining me, of course, is my co-host. It's Bally.
Hi, NBZ. Yes, it's quite some way we've come. It's been an eventful journey.
I like what we've achieved here. It's been some good stuff, and there is going to be some more good stuff coming up on today's show, which we're going to lay out for you. So, Bally, how about you tell the lovely folks listening on their audio devices or computers or whatever they're listening on what is coming up?
So we're going to start off, as usual, with what we have been playing, and then we're going to go for some emails. And finally, we're going to talk a bit about the Game Boy, considering it's the 25th anniversary of the system this year. So give you some thoughts and feedback on what we thought of the system, our experiences, and some things like that.
Yeah, launch stories, all that good stuff, and well, I guess not really launch because I believe the Game Boy came out.
I think we were born.
Right, considering the fact that we are in fact younger than the Game Boy by a couple of years or so.
Yes.
That's not quite what it is, but of course our experiences when we first got the system and all that great stuff, because it's very central to our kind of gaming histories, as it were. So a lot of good stuff there. Anyway, I think we're just gonna kick things off by jumping into what we've been playing recently in the past couple of weeks. And Bally, I hear that you have cleared a prime suspect off of your backlog. So why don't you tell us about that?
I have indeed. I have completed Metroid Prime.
Round of applause for that.
Yes.
Well done, Bally. I think that is a sterling achievement that you have pulled off here.
I'm certainly very pleased with myself for doing it, and I've never actually played, I don't think, or at least definitely not completed a first-person game ever.
In history.
In the history of forever.
Yeah.
So I was pretty pleased with myself, yeah. And overall, absolutely loved the game. The ending is superb. The final boss requires you to use every single trick you have in the book. So all your items, all your visors, and obviously your scanning equipment and all that. You're using all of it for this final boss. And it's just a really epic ending. And other than that, the second half of the game in general is just super intense. Some really clever puzzles, I should also add. And
did you really feel the difficulty kind of ramping up as you got closer and closer to the climax, or did it kind of have more of an even graph to it? Was it kind of spiking, or was it going up gradually? How did you feel how that kind of went along the game?
I think the second half of the game certainly has far more enemies, and they do gradually get heavier and more frequent as you get nearer the end of the game, I found. You can, obviously the artifact quest you can do at any point in the game. I did it like most people. I gained most of the artifacts at the very end of the game. So that's the only sort of exploration bit at the end of the game, I would say. But the first half of the game is far more exploration. Like I said, the enemies aren't anything like as tough. There's a couple of tough bosses, but by the end of the game it's just hordes of space pirates, and they're all the different types of space pirates that you have to use specific beams on, and they come at you hard, they come at you fast, they come up behind you, and it's seriously tough, a lot of the fighting. I died quite a bit at the end, but once you get used to just handling hordes of space pirates, you're pretty set to kind of get through most of the rooms, I'd say, near the end of the game.
And did you feel like that kind of those battles with the space pirates, was it forcing you to change beams a lot or change visors a lot? Because I know that's the thing, in this game, and you talked about the scan visor last time and how you kind of appreciated that. What were you thinking about the other visors and that kind of stuff?
Yeah, no, that's true. You're doing both. You're changing visors and beams to fight space pirates, because some space pirates are invisible.
Right.
And you're using the heat visor just to even find where they are. Some space pirates only get hit by I'm forgetting the names of all the beams, but the fire one, the fire beam.
Flamethrower or something?
It's
Plasma beam?
Phazon beam?
Plasma?
No, it's plasma.
Yeah.
It's plasma, and then the purple one is It's
Wave beam.
a wave beam. You're right. And then the first one is
Just a power beam, I
power
guess.
beam.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're constantly swapping between these three beams and the ice beam. So you got your four beams. There's four different types of space pirates, and they just there's just hordes of them, and it's tough. But like I said, you do get used to it. You get used to just wading through them. There's some nice little tricks and secrets at the end of the game, and just like I said, the boss design throughout the game, not just the end bosses, but Ridley, the final boss, Metroid Prime. I've forgotten his name now. Thardis.
Goddess, yes,
The
a
big
monster indeed.
the big plant boss at the start was a great opening kind of boss to face off near the start of the game.
And that one's interesting because it does
Yeah.
include a bit of puzzle elements to it as well. You're tilting the mirrors, is it, or something along those lines
Yes.
to shine light?
Yeah, so I was a bit confused at first because I was like, I'm shining the mirrors, why isn't it doing it? And then I realized you have to shine all the mirrors, so you're constantly zooming around the area, flipping all the mirrors up, hitting him, and then he sort of withers away. You morph ball into him basically through these pipes, and yeah, blow him up from the inside. It's really nice designs, and that leads me on to like talk about the morph ball sections, which
Right.
for me are part of my favorite part of this game, and that's including the magnetic tracks that you're using the spider ball to reach new areas and things like that. And it's just really cool because you're playing in first person the whole time, and the morph ball is third person, and it's a really nice mix up to sort of switch between the two. And that's obviously something you don't get as much in the 2D games, and just the ability to go around in 3D space on these tracks, magnetic tracks, to just sort of explore, reach secrets. I found that was definitely an area where this stands above the 2D games, in my opinion.
Well, there aren't really that many puzzle-centric morph ball segments in the 2D games, right? And I feel like Metroid Prime does a good job of handling a lot of the puzzle element through the morph ball segments. Do you feel that was the case by doing those?
Yeah, I mean I'd say the main two types of puzzles in Metroid Prime are the morph ball segments, like I said. So whether that's bombing certain areas or sort of using the boost to use half pipes and get up to high places using the boost ball sort of power up that you get. And then the other type of puzzle is basically, here's a locked door. There are four hidden panels in this room that you can only see using the heat visor. Go and find them and destroy them, and then you can open the door. Those are sort of the two main puzzles, I would say, for the game. And those are just sort of really nice, interesting things that are only really possible because it's a 3D game. And it feels like those are two areas that Retro thought, right, well, I know we've done a lot of the stuff that the 2D Metroids did. We got all the doors, the beams, the enemies are by and large very similar to the 2D games, but then they've sort of decided, right, we're going to put our own stamp on the Metroid series, and these are the 3D elements that we're going to invent and work into the game that work really well.
Yeah, and again, on the idea of puzzles and kind of the boss battles, I was saying before with the first one, how it's almost, I think it's similar to Zelda in some ways in that you're kind of figuring out how to defeat the boss. Traditionally, like in the 2D games, as I've said before, Metroid bosses are a case of hammering missiles and beams and just as much shit as you can throw at the boss as possible until it dies. Do you feel that Metroid Prime doesn't concentrate as much on that and instead focuses a little bit more like Zelda on figuring out the boss's patterns and their weak spots and kind of exploiting those? Is that something that you could compare?
Yeah, I would definitely agree that it's more similar to Zelda, where the bosses are far more puzzly than it is a matter of just mashing them with lasers and things. Although, having said that, once you do exploit to that area, it is all about getting your hits in that short time period, a bit like Zelda.
Right.
But the emphasis really on bosses and all the enemies in this game, to be fair, is the emphasis on scanning. So the scanning, I mean, I know this divided fans a little bit. Some people say, oh, you have to scan everything, it's so boring. But in my mind, it was one of the best bits of this game because you just go up to an enemy or a boss, you scan it, and it gives you a breakdown. It gives you these awesome pictures in your visor of sort of this. I think I said this in the last episode.
You did, yeah.
You're getting all these awesome pictures, and it fully describes the weakness of that enemy or that boss. So it saves you having to go to a guide, which I often did in the 2D Metros because I thought, how on earth do you defeat this boss? But this game is just, it's not holding your hand necessarily, but it's kind of like letting you discover in your own way, and it doesn't just reveal it entirely. It's telling you sort of where the weak spot on its body is, but not necessarily always how to exploit it, for example. The timing with Ridley, I didn't find it terribly helpful at all, and I definitely had to look up online exactly when you're meant to hit him, because on the second phase of Ridley, it's just seriously difficult to hit him at the right time. And obviously there's tons of tips and tricks on how to defeat some of these bosses sped up, which aren't necessarily glitches. I think they are actually designed that you can kind of do some tricks to speed up the defeating of bosses. But overall, I think like I said, the scanning visor is where the emphasis is on in defeating enemies rather than just mashing away on them with your laser.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, another element I was interested in was, of course, the artifact hunting at the end. A lot of people, I guess, compare to Wind Waker as the Triforce hunt at the end of the game. You know, both these GameCube games having these elements that some people not really appreciative of, but to a degree can be very interesting, because what it allows you to do is go back and explore the world now that it's fully opened up to you. You have all your upgrades and everything. That's something in Wind Waker for me when I was playing it was like, I did spend a good amount of time going around the world and discovering things, but the Triforce hunt allows you to go to areas that maybe you've not spent a huge amount of time in and discover these new islands and stuff. How did you feel going back for collecting those artifacts and kind of appreciating the world design in Metroid Prime?
I really did enjoy it, and I was actually a fan of the quest in Wind Waker to get all the Triforce pieces. More so with the HD version than the original. I thought they made it quite a bit shorter and more streamlined for that version. But I'd say even the original Metroid Prime, it's not that long. It really doesn't take a whole lot of time. Maybe an hour and a half at the most to get them all. I would say that a guide is helpful in terms of not even discovering where each artifact is, but just in order to discover the artifacts in a sort of streamlined order, so you don't find yourself having to go all the way to one end of the world, all the way to another, and back again, where you can actually do quite a lot on the way and just sort of do one loop of the world. So I would recommend a guide to ensure that you just do one loop of the world, get all of them in one go, and then get on to the final bosses. But overall, I did enjoy that area of the game, because there's so many rooms that you go back to and you have no idea that they just, for example, this is obviously quite spoilery, but Magmore Caverns, where one of the artifacts is, you basically, the whole room just sort of falls down and reveals an entirely new puzzle section. Where
is that using a power bomb to do that?
I think, yeah, no, most of these areas are discovered using power bombs, and yeah, so it reveals an entire labyrinth basically of magnetic tracks all over the walls, and then at the end of all these tracks is an artifact. I think it's an artifact, but anyway, yeah, it's really clever design, and there's lots of places like that in the game where the room looks like one thing, but then you do something special, and then all of a sudden it's transformed, and then you discover an artifact, and stuff like that is really clever design.
That's something that I do appreciate, I think, about the Metroid games, is going back and finding secrets later on and having that kind of satisfaction of being like, I am really all powerful and able to do all this stuff now. So,
but overall, I am on the edge of saying that I prefer at the moment to the 2D versions, just because it felt like a more full experience, and I don't know whether that's just because it's 3D or whatever, but I really did enjoy it. I'd also like to mention another game I've been playing this week.
Oh, right, yeah, of course.
So I was playing a bit of Smash Brothers the past few days. And
which version might you tell us,
I should
Bally?
say Smash Brothers Melee on the GameCube,
Course,
so more
yeah.
GameCube loving. And Yeah, I've now completed all 51 event matches,
And
and
I am really mad. I am really
and it
mad.
was so difficult. Oh my god, was it difficult? Like,
See, so me and Bally have been going back and forth a little bit in the past couple of months about Smash Brothers Melee and going back to it, and we've been playing some matches with each other, you know, going around to each other's house and being like, yeah, I really appreciate Melee a huge amount more going back to it now, because there are so many things, not only the competitive aspect to it and how it's such a refined and mechanically solid game, but so many of those elements of Smash Brothers that we love nowadays that we didn't appreciate back then, of all these franchises and these nods to other games and all that stuff. It's such a cool thing to go back and have a look at, and yeah.
and realize how many event matches we hadn't done.
Yeah, I mean, I was going through, this was my aim, because basically we want to unlock Final Destination, because neither of us have it. Or at least, no, I don't anymore, you do. So I was going through and kind of doing the hard slog to try and complete all of them, and I got to event match 51. I'm like, okay, I'm going to try and do this Jigglypuff strategy where you use rest and smash people off the stage. How, coincidentally, is that what you used to defeat it in the end?
I did. I tried a number of techniques that I just made up myself. For example, like Pikachu's down B. I used a lot of Donkey Kong's down B. But yeah, basically I just did Jigglypuff in the end.
Kind of just refined that rest move, which is quite hard to pull off, I think.
Basically, it is hard to pull off, but it's incredibly easy to pull off against Giga Bowser. Because
right,
of his
Giga Bowser
size.
is huge, yeah.
So you just have to get in the middle of him. He takes two rests per KO. So then you're left with roughly usually 2 lives versus 3 lives with Ganondorf and Mewtwo. So you are left to fight Mewtwo and Ganondorf with just your regular moves, because I wasn't really using rest on them as much. So I basically, I mean, I did actually manage to catch them a couple of times while I was trying to rest Giga Bowser. They sort of got caught in the fire, and you do, I think, need that luck just to keep going.
Yes, a lot of that is kind of getting the KOs that you wouldn't normally do with the AI mucks up to give you the window of opportunity.
Yeah, but I mean, once they're down to a few lives each and it's just Giga Bowser's dead, I was just using like rollout and moves like that, because the AI is actually relatively predictable. Like, it'll just keep walking towards you, and sometimes it will dodge your rollouts, and a few times I would just roll out off the stage and be like, oh god, I can't believe I just didn't bring Jigglypuff back on the stage. But there's few things I've done in gaming that were tougher than that, I must say. It was
definitely
pretty good fun. But yeah.
Alright, fantastic. So, well, I'm in London right now, so I won't be able to have my GameCube and be able to go back and try that for about a month, which is unfortunate, but I'll get there, and you know, then we can play some Final Destination matches, and it'll be a lot of fun, I hope, especially in the lead up to you know, the new Smash coming out, because
Smash 4.
Getting very excited for that. Anyway, we've talked about 2 GameCube games. How about we throw a third one in there, Bally?
Why not?
Because I have been playing something I picked up relatively on the cheap from a second-hand game store. Another GameCube game, Prince of Persia, The Sands of Time. Now, I believe Prince of Persia was a game series before this game debuted. I think it was like
Was it?
2D. Yeah, there was 2D games back on the NES and on some old game, maybe on PC. And so I think it had been dormant for a long time before this game came out, and then Ubisoft decided, right, we're going to take this, we're going to reboot it and bring it into the 3D world, as it were. And I have to say that they were very successful in doing that, because Prince of Persia, I believe to be one of the most influential games of the GameCube era and of that generation in general, just because of what came after it. And it's also a hell of a lot of fun. It's a very, very fun game. So if you don't know what it is, it's essentially, if you're going to boil it down to a genre, it's a third-person action platformer. So the game kind of revolves around 3 main concepts of platforming, environmental platforming, combat against enemies, and puzzle solving, light puzzle solving. And, you know, to some degree, I feel like those elements are well balanced, but there is a part of me that struggles with some of the mechanics, because they are so old, and this game it has a lot of jank to it, you know. Bally, you watched me play some of the start of this game, and do you remember, like, when the cutscenes were happening, the audio was really hard to hear, And
Yeah.
the balance there is a bit weird. I think that's just a condition of that era, right? Just the technology.
I think so, but I mean, there are plenty of games that have cutscenes where the audio is fine, so it's just maybe that tiny little bit of polish it needed on the cutscenes just to think, all right, we'll balance the audio levels and then put it all together, and it just maybe is lacking a little bit in that way. I don't know.
Right, and I mean, especially for me as someone who edits a podcast and works a lot with audio and is, I mean, I'm not very technical about it, but I am to a degree an audiophile. I like things to be well balanced and stuff, and I do not appreciate podcasts that have a horrible variation between the different people on it and how it spikes sometimes and they don't deal with that. So it's a particular issue I take. But something I definitely feel like, obviously this isn't a Nintendo published game, it's an Ubisoft game, and so it doesn't quite have that polish, you know the Nintendo polish that you come to expect from those titles. A little bit of jank in there, and symptomatic of the era to some degree, but I guess let's talk about the gameplay, because there are a lot of elements to it that I think are really very, very innovative for the time and super interesting. Obviously, the main one, the game is called The Sands of Time, right? So it's based around the idea that you find this dagger, the dagger of time, or the sand dagger. I can't remember what it's called, because to be honest, I'm not really paying attention to the story. It was kind of a background thing for me. But this dagger allows you to rewind time. So say you accidentally mess up a platforming segment, you jump off the side. Don't worry, it's not going to game over. As long as you have enough sand in your tank, you can hold down the L button and rewind time and pull yourself back up to the place where you were, and you're able to go again. You're like, okay, fine, I messed up, but it's okay, I have another chance, let's not do that this time. And to some degree, I think it's really clever, because it stops those issues from occurring. But from another aspect, it's interesting because this game is based around checkpoints, right? So if you die, you go back to a checkpoint. And I think that the checkpointing in games since Prince of Persia came out has been a lot better across the board, meaning that messing up a jump isn't as penalizing in modern games. It's just going to put you right back where you were and allow you to attempt it again. And so this is, to some degree, just sponging that. It's kind of stopping that from being a big issue. But because of a lot of the time the mechanics being a little bit janky and you thinking you can make a jump, but you can't actually because you can't properly see the environment around you. So it gets a little bit tricky there.
It's nice that they do it in quite a thematic way. Like, maybe it's not overly thematic, but the idea of a sand of time, a sand timer, the idea that you're jumping off and rewinding time, I think it's quite unique in that way. Like, they probably discovered that mechanic ages ago, and then thought, how do we fit this into the game? Oh, we could make it like a sand timer because there's lots of sand in Persia. We could just do that, and it's quite fitting.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it definitely works, and I think it's maybe one of the reasons they chose the franchise to bring it back with, because, you have brand recognition there, but you also have the ability to do something different with it, and it kind of ties in with mechanics. And I feel like that's something like Nintendo do, and they are very open about this, that they concentrate first and foremost on a game mechanic, and then they'll attach a character or an IP to it and build from there, right? So Mario Galaxy could have been any character, any brand new thing, but they decided, we're going to take these mechanics, we're going to refine them, and then we'll attach something, then we'll attach the shell, but we get the core right. And I think that is one thing that they were definitely focusing on, is trying to do that in Prince of Persia, and it works well. So
I feel like in terms of Mario, they might have even done that with something like Sunshine, where they said, right, he's going to have a jetpack. How do we make the jetpack? Okay, why don't we make it water, and then because it's water, he can clean up the area or something.
Yes,
so,
yeah.
I agree with, and especially with Galaxy, it was like, right, we want these interesting platforming levels out in free space. Why don't we just make it space and just do the Galaxy theme? So you're right. It's fitting a theme to a mechanic is quite a nice way for a game to work.
Definitely, and on that point, the platforming, I think, is generally pretty solid. There are times at which, a lot of it is jumping from poles and swinging and wall jumping, and it's really satisfying to pull off. I mean, sometimes you'll screw it up horribly, but you do have the fallback of the rewind mechanic, so it's great to have that feature so that you can just, you instantly know what you've messed up, so you rewind and have another bash at it, and that saves the time of reloading the screen and getting back to the point you were at. So it's really great, and I think that is where the game is strongest, when it is these long segments of either being underground or outside in the open or inside the palace, of just going from area to area and pulling off wall jumps combined with swinging on poles, combined with wall running. That's where things get fantastic, and you just have that sense of momentum and speed, and when you pull it off, it's like, and I think this is interesting because I feel like this game it casts a very wide net in terms of influence, and something like Mirror's Edge, where that game is all about momentum and speed and executing and doing wall runs and doing jumps and areas. I think there's a huge amount of that blueprint in this game, because the wall running is such a fantastic element, and it just, every time you see it, the animation is so great, it feels great to pull off, and is just awesome. And again, I think in terms of that influence net, something like Uncharted very much takes from Prince of Persia, where you have the environmental platforming and all these kind of things, like some set pieces where buildings are falling down. Like Uncharted does an incredible job of that cinematic experience of like running off a burning building as it crashes before you, and Prince of Persia does some of that. Of course, the Gamecube isn't really powerful enough to pull it off to the same degree as the PS3 does, but it still does a lot of that stuff where buildings are falling down and you're kind of trying to do timed platforming segments.
What would you say were your main gripes with it, though, in terms of, I know that you had a bit of an issue with the hordes of enemies at certain points in the game.
Yeah, so I think getting onto combat, it's a very different scenario, because I like the combat at its core. I think it's pretty fun and very it's not too difficult to pull off. The issue I have is really a combination of factors. Number one, when you knock an enemy to the ground, they are not dead. You have to eliminate them with the sand dagger, which basically sucks sand into your tank, and it allows you, basically it feeds into the mechanic of rewinding time, because as soon as you take an enemy down, you zap them into your dagger and you're able to rewind time and give yourself an extra way to get out of situations. But what happens is there is an animation for you going over and sucking the sand out of an enemy. However, this animation does not allow you to be free from the enemies. So you could have a situation when you're trying to, suck someone into your dagger and you get hit by another enemy. And that sucks, because not only does it cut off the animation and means you don't get that enemy, because that enemy will come back to life and then maybe another one will come around and will hit you down to the ground again. And of course there is the idea, if you fuck up once, then you can use the sand mechanic to rewind, but sometimes in combat especially, that gets a bit glitchy, where it will not necessarily put you back to a place where you're safe, and it will sometimes jam and get stuck, and you'll have to restart the combat scenario over anyway. So that's a little bit of a problem there. The second one is just the sheer volume of enemies. The numbers they throw at you from this very start of the game are insane. It's just like you're usually taking on about 4 or 5 units at once, but the problem is that once they're gone, 4 more or 5 more will spawn in, and then you clear those out, and 4 or 5 more will spawn, and it seems like this almost endless battle you have to fight, and you really need to concentrate, because you do take a decent amount of damage from each individual hit, and your life isn't necessarily that huge. So you do get the issues where you're like, oh man, I should probably rewind time to get my health back, but then of course these enemies are going to come back to life, and then I need to go over to that area to the water, because basically how you heal health in this game is you sip water and it refills you. So it is this constant balance and battle, and I have a lot of issues with it, and it did cause a lot of frustration, and especially at points where I was like, fuck this game, I want to throw out the damn window. But I stuck with it, and I think that you do need to kind of get over that hump, because the rest of the game is so great, and I appreciate it a huge amount just because of how fantastic the execution is. So So yeah, it's really been a great experience, and I mean to touch lightly on the puzzle stuff because I haven't really talked too much about that. A lot of it is very simple. It's kind of moving blocks onto platforms to open doors, and swinging on ropes to find areas, and mirror puzzles. And I think a lot of that is kind of a bit of Zelda influence in there, especially kind of rebounding light and that kind of stuff from Ocarina of Time did it with the mirror shield in dungeons, and obviously Wind Waker followed that through with one of its dungeons, and I think that it takes a lot of those concepts, modernizes them, and does a great kind of final job of putting the whole package together. So yeah, I really liked it. Bally, do you think that this is something you could potentially give a bash?
Yeah, I mean, what really appealed to me about it, maybe this sounds a bit weird, but it sounds like, and you said earlier, it's quite a short game. So just sort of like...
Yeah, I mean, it took me about 8 hours to go through the story. So.
Yeah, I mean, Metroid took me about 20 hours. So, I mean, I like a mixture of longer and shorter gaming experience. Obviously, nothing as long as Xenoblade for me personally. But, yeah, just playing like a 9-hour game. I mean, most games I play usually take about 12 to 18, I'd say. So, just a shorter game, especially one on Gamecube. And it was a really big game at the time. Everyone was saying, wow. And it's not first party, obviously, which is unusual for a Nintendo console.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I do want to try it out at some point soon.
Yeah, it was Ubisoft, of course. And, the interesting thing about Ubisoft is I feel like at the start of generations, they tend to develop new franchises, and they do tend to try and build on their previous ones. You can see it right now with Assassin's Creed segueing into Watch Dogs. Of course, they're still continuing Assassin's Creed, but the fact that they're kind of using Watch Dogs as the next gen version, and they're kind of going to build on those concepts a bit more. I feel like that was the thing with Prince of Persia, in that they did have Prince of Persia games on the 360 and PS3, but they took that blueprint and evolved it into the Assassin's Creed world, and took the ideas of these platforming elements and that kind of stuff, and the combat, and changed it to more open world structure. And you can really see that, because I'm actually also going through Assassin's Creed 2 right now on my PS3. I haven't really talked about it that much because I haven't honestly played a huge amount of it, and I'm kind of going back and forth with it, and I can't play it at the moment because I'm in London, but you definitely get the feeling that there is a lot of the initial ideas from Prince of Persia there. So if nothing else, and I really did enjoy Prince of Persia, if nothing else, you can really tell how massively influential the game was, and it's super historically relevant, and I find that stuff really interesting. So there you go. Prince of Persia, The Sands of Time. Man, if they could get a GameCube Virtual Console together, this would be a great game to put on it. Tell you what. One day, Bally.
One day there has to be. There's just too many great games on GameCube. It is still my favorite console out there. So
it's continuing to prove that, of course.
Exactly.
You just played one of the greatest games of all time on it. So there you go. In any case, I think that pretty much wraps us up quite succinctly. And hey, if you want to listen to us again, you can just pull a Prince of Persia, get out your Sands of Time, rewind the podcast. But if you're sticking with us, we're going to march ahead to the next segment, so don't go anywhere. We will be back with some of your emails. Okay then, welcome back everyone to the second part of the show. In this, as per usual, we're going to be answering some of the emails that you have been sending our way. And we've got some really good ones today, so thank you for all those, and hopefully we can give you some good answers. But as always, you can keep emailing your questions into our address, which Bally shall so eloquently relate to you at this moment.
Our address is NYPPQuestions@gmail.com.
It's very easy to do. Just go to a computer and send us one our way. So we are going to kick things off with the first email, which Bally has at hand.
So our first email is from WaveRider900. NBZ and Bally the Legends. I just started and much to my chagrin caught up to NYPP in the past 2 weeks, so excuse me if these questions are completely unrelated as they were not all inspired by the same episode or time period. Number 1. Bally, you said a while back that you're a video game purist in the sense that you like games just the way the developers made them and are not interested in customization. For instance, you spurn Advance Wars' make your own map feature. What do you think about the idea of mods for games like Skyrim, e.g., although I know you haven't played it? I personally am a purist in the sense that I really dislike the whole idea of mods. Secondly, will you guys ever consider playing competitive Melee? I got into the competitive side last year right before EVO and it's become like 75% of my life ever since. I know there isn't a big scene in the UK, only one top 100 player by the name of Fuzziness, but with Dolphin net play and such, long distance is getting easier. Finally, I think NBZ, he said he played Super Mario World when he was younger but never beat it and now intends to go back and play it again. I just did the exact same and I'd highly suggest it. It's far easier now than when I was 8 years old. Anyway, I'm from DC and I hope you two continue this podcast for many decades to come. Thanks. P.S. Have you played Battalion Wars, Bally? If ever there was made a perfect 3D adaptation of Advance Wars, I'd say Battalion Wars Wii is it. Well, I should start by saying I haven't played Battalion Wars, and yeah, one day I'd be interested in picking it up. It never caught my fancy at the time, obviously, because it's very different to Advance Wars, but well, in my opinion, from what I'd read at the time, but obviously you're suggesting it's quite similar. So yeah, I'd probably try it sometime. But anyway.
So I guess we'll just break it down part by part, right? So let's go ahead and talk about the first thing. Bally, of course, you being a purist in the sense of hating, modified like Smash Brothers stages. See, this is a thing back in the day.
Say Metroid.
Back in the day, our friend Ali T and myself would often go on to the Smash Brothers customization area for Brawl and make our own stages, and Bally would straight up refuse to play them because he said that they were terrible, and they kind of were, but that wasn't the point. Like, they were funny and they were dumb and you could do really stupid stuff with them, and we made some hilarious stages, but Bally never wanted to. So Bally, why is this? Why do you hate them? And what do you think about the idea of mods in general? And I guess he did talk about Advance Wars and making your own maps, but quite recently I played some Advance Wars with you, and we were using a custom-made map, so you kind of seem to be down with that. So what are your feelings on that?
I should say I wasn't the one who made the custom map. It was
you weren't the one making it.
My friend Alex. So yeah, I'm personally not into making custom made maps on Advance Wars, but I would say that there's a big difference between Smash Brothers customization and Advance Wars customization in the sense that you can recreate an exact stage that's in the actual game with Advance Wars in the map maker, whereas in Super Smash Brothers, obviously the stages are specially designed with the backgrounds, the music, and even the stages themselves. So I would say that they're slightly different, and I'm still not massively in favor of customization, whether it's either of those games. I definitely lean more towards Advance Wars in terms of, obviously, I do enjoy playing a custom map every now and then, but I just can't be bothered to make them myself. In terms of modding games in general, I've never really experienced it, to be honest. I would say I don't know. Can you think of an instance that I might have wanted to mod a game, NBZ, or I can't really think of any.
I mean, not really, and that's the thing. It doesn't often happen on console.
Yeah.
Like, it's really hard to do. It's very much a PC thing, right? Modding is something that the PC community get behind, and things like Skyrim. There's people who have like retextured the game so that it looks like Zelda and stuff like that. There's some crazy stuff people do with these games and mod them for different purposes. I think the closest like Nintendo games come to is there's some interesting stuff you can do with Wii in terms of if you hack your Wii and make it able to run homebrew. Then there's I remember Guillaume on RFN talking about this a while back, but there are people who have made essentially a new version of New Super Mario Brothers. You use the disc, you have the actual disc for New Super Mario Brothers, you put it in, but you start running it through homebrew, and these guys have basically made brand new levels and brand new everything just using those assets, which is really cool. And you know, it's not really, I mean, I guess it is illegal to hack your Wii, but the fact if you own the disc and this is kind of free content that they're putting out there, that's really interesting. And you know, there's a lot of people on the internet obviously who make ROMs and hacks of Mario games to make them insanely hard and that kind of stuff. But I think that's as close as it gets, really.
Yeah, I would agree that I think it's interesting, but it's never something I would never try and open up one of my consoles, for example. Like
Yeah.
I know nothing about anything technological like that, and that's half the reason that I am a Nintendo gamer and not a PC gamer, is I do not have the mental capacity to buy a PC that I would like, or that would be good value, or that whatever. So I mean, if I was going to get another console, I'd almost be more likely to get either a PlayStation or an Xbox than a PC, just for the simple reason that you plug it into your TV
And it works.
put in your game, and it works. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I like the simplicity.
I mean, in terms of my experience with modding, I guess Minecraft is the big one. Like, the thing with
Yeah.
Minecraft is the game is basically perfect for modding, that you can do so many different things with it, and there's so many customization options and different skins and everything. And yeah, I mean, I generally play kind of vanilla Minecraft, but if it were any kind of mod thing that I would get into, it'd be surrounding that. And there's a really cool Pokemon-based Minecraft thing. It's called Pixelmon, and that's something that I'm interested in checking out in the future. So maybe I'll do some of that. But anyway,
More importantly,
Smash.
Smash.
Right, competitive Smash Brothers, particularly Melee, which is the big one for most people. So Bally and I have kind of, interestingly enough, slowly started learning more and more.
I should say that, and I mentioned this on an episode a while back. I can't remember which one. I reckon it was about episode 12 or something. But
Yeah.
I've actually entered a Smash Brothers tournament.
Right, yeah.
I didn't go to this event planning on entering one. It was just this anime event, and I was doing working on a website as part of my course in relation to board gaming, which is another one of my hobbies. But there was a Smash Bros tournament at this event, and I just thought, I'm here, why not? Let's just do it. It was free, and
Yeah.
I entered the Smash Brothers Melee tournament and got my butt kicked first round. So, but yeah, you're right. We've kind of gradually learned more about the competitive Smash community, and really kind of getting into it a bit, actually.
Yeah, and especially, you know, with you recently completing all the event matches.
Yeah,
You
so
know.
I'll just drop that in there. Yeah, so.
We're getting up there. So I don't know. It'll be a while before we master the arts of L cancelling and wave dashing, but you know, there's time.
And the thing is, we're in the wrong part of the country. Like, you need to always be in London to do it.
Yeah, man, try and find a competitive Smash scene in Scotland. That's like, that's dumb. Like,
yeah,
Jesus, holy crap.
But I'd always be up for. I'm not prepared to put in the hours to get competitive, but I'd always be up for having a go.
Yeah, and trying to learn a bit more is
yeah,
always interesting.
Yeah,
so.
it's always fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess now we've got a couple of emails.
Well, before we do that, he has a final note on Super Mario World and talking about that. I never did play Super Mario World when I was younger. I'm not sure if that was him mishearing it or not, but I've never actually played that game at all. I guess the closest I came to it was like Mario 2 on GBA, which was using the Mario World art style.
I think that must have been the confusion.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, that was, probably what it was. You have Mario World, Super Mario World on Virtual Console, Bally.
Yeah, I've played the first couple of worlds, and then I basically stopped, and it was quite frustrating. But
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's definitely easier to go back to now with save states and everything on Wii U.
yeah,
So
I mean, I am gonna go back to it at some point and play that game because it's obviously well renowned for being a fantastic game.
yeah,
So
and I'll probably dip into it at some point as well. But it's good to hear that you found it a lot easier and a bit more encouraging to go back to it. So that's good.
cool.
Anyway, let's
So,
move on to
yeah.
the other questions now. Then
We've got
Bally.
a couple of emails about Hyrule Warriors. So the first one's from Zvari1228, and they're from Kansas in the United States. Dear MBZ and Bally, I remember listening to your podcast back in December when Hyrule Warriors was revealed and you initially had mixed emotions about it. Since E3, we have been given new information about the game almost every week, most recently with the announcements Ruto, Darunia, and Sheik as playable characters. Has this new information changed your opinions about the game? I personally am very excited for this title, and I'm looking forward to playing it later this year. Thanks, and keep up the podcast, guys. It's great. And then another email about Hyrule Warriors from Dudbun. Why howdy MBZ and Bally, it is I again after a while, the great Dud of the Buns. And I'll cut straight to the chase with my question here, and that is, what are your opinions on Hyrule Warriors, and how is it turning out? Personally, the game is really starting to grow on me after seeing quite a few things about it. Honestly, I'm kind of starting to get a bit hyped for it, which is kind of weird, since at first I was pretty much against the idea of this game happening. But opinions change, I guess. Anyway, I'd like to know what you guys think of this game now that we've known about it for a while and gotten a bit of news. Oh, and on the topic of Zelda, this question is for MBZ. When's the next part of your Twilight Princess LP coming out, if it's ever going to come out? I'm still waiting for you to guide me through what to do after the Hidden Village. Anyway, thanks for reading, guys. Until next time.
First up, the fact that you are actually playing through with my Twilight Princess LP means that you must have the patience of a fucking saint to be trying to have not finished that game for over 3 years because you're playing along with me is insanity, and I can commend you in every possible way. That is amazing. Of course, Twilight Princess is never gonna, I almost said never gonna finish because it probably will at some point.
It's not. You do still have a hefty bit of the game to go.
I have a decent amount to go, but Twilight Princess is hard for me to record, and I do it when I can. And never ever assume that it is cancelled, because it is never cancelled, and I will never say it is cancelled because it isn't. I will go back to it and I will finish it. So don't worry about that. It's fine. Anyway, Hyrule Warriors, Bally. So we have a couple of different opinions. Zvari was saying that it was something that he was already looking forward to, and now that he wants our changed opinions on it, if we have any changed ones. And Dudbun coming, I guess, more from what my perspective is that having no interest and then kind of weirdly getting interested in it. How do you stand on this matter, Bally?
I have really not changed a whole lot right from the off. The second I was informed that this was not the Zelda, like it wasn't a part of the Zelda canon, it wasn't a traditional Zelda where you visit dungeons and well, okay, you do fight enemies, but you know what I mean. It's not. It's not a Zelda game. It is. Oh, never mind. You know what I mean.
It's not a Zelda game. That's fair enough to say.
It's a game with Zelda in it. It is not a Zelda game. There we go. That's a good way of defining it. So yeah, I've never been into Dynasty Warriors. I'm not.
I mean, this gives us a good opportunity to discuss the Nintendo Direct focused on it, which actually happened pretty recently. Mm-hmm. Did you actually go and watch the full thing, or was you just catching the end of it?
For some reason, I was up at the time that it was on, which was like the middle of the night. I can't remember why I was up this late. It was literally about 4 a.m.
Yeah, it was 4 a.m. I went to sleep because I was like, I'm not staying up till then. I'm going to watch it in the morning, and that's what I did.
Well, I watched the end of it, and it was just this horrible scene of them saying, "Oh yeah, and the moon from Majora's Mask is going to be in the game," and then it just showed, I think it was Link. He hook shots the sky, drags down the moon from Majora's Mask, and just slams it onto his enemies in front of him. And I just thought, This is just ridiculous. That's
why it's so good.
That's why it's so good,
Bally. That's why it's so great. That's why it's so amazing. Okay, so let me cut to the chase here.
And chain jumps in the game.
Oh my god, that's fucking insane.
It's terrible.
No, it's not. It's amazing. Okay, this is where we differ, Bally.
I know.
Okay, I agree with you.
Yes.
Because you are very honest about the fact that Dynasty Warriors is something you do not give a shit about.
I am a purist, damn it.
Yeah, I agree. I am not into Dynasty Warriors. I think that gameplay is so repetitive and lacking in any sort of challenge and just very mindless. Like, the most mindless combat you could ever imagine. However, the flip side of the coin is that the fan service and the amount of attention to detail in terms of different elements of the Zelda series that they are putting into this game is insane and ridiculous in the best possible way, and I almost want to get this game purely for the fact that I am interested in those crazy weird things that are going to happen, and the stages and all the different characters and their moves and just the special moves and these, like, fucking Midna takes the fused shadow, turns into the gooey giant thing that she is at the end of Twilight Princess, and destroys loads of people on the screen. Great, what does that do? Nothing, but it looked fucking awesome.
I agree, elements like that look awesome, but to describe the whole game as fan service when, like I said, the moon from Majora's Mask is just plucked out of the sky randomly and smashed down on some enemies. I think there will be some Zelda fans, including myself, who think that it's just kind of abusing the IP to some degree.
I wouldn't say it's abusing.
Can you see where I'm coming from? Only when they make it a bit over the top silly. And
no, but the thing is, that's the point. Like, I think you're missing the point. That's the reason they're doing it.
But,
like, because the Zelda series is so constrained and so kind of based in its own universe, and it has restrictions and it has limits. This is basically Zelda on crack and saying there are no rules, there are no hard limits. You can do whatever. We can take the boss from City in the Sky, put him in the Shadow Palace, and have the entire Majora's Mask moon thrown down on his head. And that's crazy, and that's amazing and ridiculous, and I love seeing mashup scenarios, and that's part of why Smash Brothers is so fantastic, because it is these ridiculous situations of characters being smashed together in ways that you would never see them otherwise. So I do think that it is kind of capitalizing on some of that Smash Brothers, feelings to some extent. So
yeah, and maybe I'm being hypocritical in saying that bringing down the Majora's Mask moon is necessarily abusing the IP when, say, in Smash Brothers, you can do other crazy stuff. Maybe yes. I am being hypocritical in that sense. I don't know. It's not.
I think it's more that you have a negative attitude and outlook towards this game in general.
I do, but I don't know. I mean, are you gonna get it day one, do you think?
I don't know. It's a decent-ish price on Amazon right now. It's hovering around the £30 mark, which is not too bad. So I may just do it, and it kind of depends somewhat on reviews as well. Like, if the reviews are skewing more towards the positive end, then I'm more likely to go with it. And obviously, it has to be from people who I trust and people whose opinions I respect and that stuff. So I'll see how it goes, but it's there's no doubt I will eventually pick it up when the price goes down. If not straight away.
I mean, I can be swayed if this comes out and it gets some seriously glowing reviews, or at least high 80s, kind of 80% or so, and people are saying, oh yeah, this is an okay game, but if you like Zelda at all, then you must get this. I would be tempted, but I don't know. I don't feel as excited by some of the trailers as perhaps yourself and others have been so far. And I hope there are others who are like me out there who think it's all just a bit over the top and are waiting for their nice steak when it comes to the Wii U Zelda, rather than this fast food that's being shoved into everyone's face right now.
The analogies. The analogies.
So I'm gonna wait for my steak at the moment, is what I'm thinking. But
man, McDonald's is real good. I'll tell you what.
It kills people. It's killing the steak franchise. By the way.
No. Well, okay, I think it would have been good for you to watch the full direct because
I should watch the full direct. I will.
Because it does explain some interesting elements about the game that I don't think a lot of light has been shone on, and the fact that the single-player mode is going to have like some really cool cutscenes and between the characters and stuff, and it's going to have a kind of a storyline, as stupid and as crazy as that is. It's something that kind of reminds me of what they did with the Subspace Emissary, and those cutscenes were awesome. I love that stuff in Brawl. The actual mode was kind of terrible, but the fan service involved in those cutscenes was awesome, and they also kind of talked about like a very RPG mechanic where I'm not sure if this is probably in the other Dynasty Warriors games, but you level up your characters as you go along and you kind of gain experience and all that stuff, and that's a really nice feedback loop, and that's part of the reason I really got into Titanfall is because a lot of it is based on gaining experience and leveling up and unlocking new stuff as you go. So I think that could be something that really helps to hook people into it, and probably what would hook me into it, to be honest. So I would definitely say you should go watch that and
Cool.
kind of get a bit more of a better idea of what they're kind of doing with that game.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
So, yeah. Well, that was one of the most heated things we've had on the podcast.
Breathe out. Here we go.
All right,
Here's
let's
an
go.
email from Bruno Garcia. Hello, NBZ and Bally. I really enjoyed the jukebox segment. As a listener of radio trivia, it's nice to have essentially 2 podcasts in one. I look forward to more of that. Now for the question: Who is your favorite character in video games in terms of character development, and your favorite character in terms of just personality? Personally, my favorite character in any video game is Ike from Fire Emblem Path of Radiance. He goes from an inexperienced young lad to the commander of the Grail?
Grail, I guess. I
Yes,
don't know.
Grail.
I've not played these games.
Commander of the Grail, mercenaries, and hero of Tellius. In terms of just personality, my favourite is Leon from Resident Evil 4. The dialogue in that game is so ridiculous. It's enjoyable, and Leon's pretty funny sometimes. Keep in mind RE4 is a horror game. Keep up the good work, and thanks for the great podcast. P.S. I had never played a horror game, or a shooter for that matter, before playing RE4. Not being a fan of either genres, but now it's one of my favourite games of all time. It's really not scary at all, maybe just in 1 or 2 instances, and it's actually more funny than it is scary. I really recommend you play this masterpiece of a game. You won't regret it. Nope.
Still not convincing.
No. I can't.
All right. Bally, I mean, this question is not super relevant for you because I don't think you've played too many games that have a strong focus on character, right?
I mean, I'm 23. I'd be lying if I said I felt emotionally connected with Mario and Yoshi.
Hey man, Yoshi! He's just a poor lonely dinosaur.
Or even Link. I mean, I feel like Nintendo characters don't have much deep character. Or maybe that's unfair. Or I don't know.
It's not unfair. It's true.
Or maybe someone like Samus has a little more. But I don't know.
It depends.
I guess. It depends on the game. But I'll be honest. I've like the question suggests as asking. I don't have any characters in mind that are my favorites. Or I mean, I think Samus is cool, but I don't relate to her emotionally kind of with her character development. That's not why I play Metroid games. It's kind of it's for everything else. And the same with Mario. Like I said, I'm not emotionally connected with him. I just want to jump on some platforms. Okay, so that's kind of the aim with those games. But obviously, you've played some perhaps more mature games, or certainly more non-Nintendo games than me, NBZ. Sure.
Well, I mean, I have, I guess, some interesting ones, although they're kind of obvious. I would say in terms of personality, just someone like straight up Nathan Drake from Uncharted, I think that he's very carefree and fun, and he just has some great lines and there's some great dialogue in that game, and it's very narrative driven. I think that's the thing with you is you don't really play any narratively driven games, so it's hard to get that kind of connection at all. Whereas throughout the Uncharted series, you have a lot of cutscenes and very cinematic moments and that kind of stuff. And there's some really great characters in that game. Sully as well. Sully's fantastic. I love his kind of wisecracking old man stuff, and those guys are great. And it's very lighthearted and it's really fun, and it's just like an action romp adventure. It's very Indiana Jones in that way. So I'd say in terms of personality, like, Uncharted is a good pick. If we're going from character development, I think I have a very solid one, which a lot of people would probably pick, and that is Clementine from The Walking Dead. And she's really, really fascinating as a character because, she starts out as this young, naive girl in this zombie apocalypse, and, you take care of her with Lee, and you kind of build her up, and you're teaching her things about this harsh world, and she's kind of learning as she goes, and kind of the entire first season of The Walking Dead is you kind of taking her under your wing and developing her and helping her and teaching her about how to survive. And essentially when you get to the second season and you're playing as Clementine, you're starting to put all those skills into practice. You're becoming more independent. You're much more of a leader in that aspect instead of being kind of someone who's following in the group. And I really like what they've done, and I think that she is a super fascinating character. In terms of female characters, like one of the best in the history of games, like no doubt about that. And she's like a 14-year-old girl, which is incredible. I'd say that's definitely a really good pick. So yeah,
cool.
Some good characters there.
I think we got time for one more email.
Oh, we can maybe squeeze it in.
We'll squeeze one in. Right, here we go. This one's from Farak. Hey, what's up? I've been a fan of your podcast from the very beginning, and I just wanted you guys to know that I love all of them, especially the last one where you talked about Metroid Prime, which is one of my favourite games of all time, and Xenoblade, a game I was actually playing at the same time as NBZ and finished right before the podcast.
Congratulations!
Yeah, this is great timing. So I've got two questions. Number one. So Bally, you've played both Prime and Fusion recently. I'm pretty sure you have noticed that both games handle storytelling and area exploration quite differently. In Fusion, you constantly know what's going on and where you need to go, although it lets you explore to a certain degree. While in Prime, once you land on Talon 4, you are left with no aims or goals, and the only thing you can do is wander aimlessly and explore the land. The question is, which one of those systems do you guys prefer, and which one do you think is better for this series?
I think we should just go ahead and do this one first.
Yeah,
and then
sure,
we can
let's go
jump
for
to
it.
the second one.
Well, I think we're going to differ on this one, perhaps. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I certainly prefer the sort of Metroid Prime / Super Metroid model where you land on the planet and there's a genuine feeling of just solitude, loneliness, and you're just exploring this planet, both in Talon 4 and Zebes. Zebes?
Who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, exactly. So Greg Leahy pronounces it. He pronounces it Zebes.
Man, Zebes.
Yeah, Zebes. So yeah. No, I prefer that sort of planet exploration thing. That was probably the thing that annoyed me the most about Fusion, was that it was on a space station, and there's some when you're playing a space game, anything that's sci-fi that I like, the best thing I like about sci-fi, or something like Star Wars, are the planets and these different systems. And I feel like Prime and Super Metroid allow you to explore a genuine alien planet, because that's the best bit in my mind about the Metroid series, is aliens and alien planets and exploration. I think that is a key part of Metroid. That
it's a key tenet of the series. Yeah,
which was not brushed to the side for Fusion. I mean, Fusion is trying its own thing, and don't get me wrong, I absolutely love Fusion, and it does its own thing really successfully. But of the two styles, I definitely prefer the more Prime Super Metroid exploration based style.
Yeah, well, I mean, Fusion kind of backloads its exploration to some extent. Especially the way I run through the game is I play it all the time because it's one of my favorite games ever, and there is a lot of kind of the end part of the game. If you want to get all the upgrades, you have to cycle through the areas and find all the secret places in order to get them, and there's some really fantastic puzzle rooms in there, and pulling off multiple shine sparks and chaining and these crazy maneuvers, which I'm a huge fan of. But in terms of the element of Fusion being more linear and Prime and Super Metro being more open. I do really like the Fusion model for the reason that it just propels you forward. Like, there is no stopping that train. It is just constantly area to go, go, go. You're doing things, you know where you're going, you know what's laid out for you. And I think Fusion's a good place to start because it doesn't mean you're getting lost and having to struggle and learn mechanics as well as trying to find your way around the place. And I think it's great for newcomers, which is why I thought it was a good suggestion for you to play as your first Metroid game, Bally, and kind of introduce you to the series. But I generally do like that model a little bit more, and that kind of is reflected in the fact that a game I played last year called Guacamelee, which was one of my favorite games of last year, does kind of adapt to the Fusion model a bit more, where it is much more linear and funneling you towards a direction. And I just love that stuff. I just find that if you really concentrate down on the core tenets of the mechanics and focus a little less on the exploration, I find a bit more satisfying because it means I'm not aimlessly wandering and wasting time to some degree. So that's why I kind of fall down a little bit more on the Fusion side. But I totally respect the exploration-based stuff, and I'm totally down with it. So yeah.
I guess we can get on to the second part of the email, second question. So apparently in Xenoblade Chronicles X, the main character is a customizable avatar. At first I thought it would be like Robin from Fire Emblem Awakening, where the avatar is also a talking character with a defined role in the story. However, some people have pointed out that in this game's case the avatar does not speak in cutscenes, at least so far. So NBZ, considering how heavily plot focused the first Xenoblade was, what do you think of this feature? Thank you guys for your attention. By the way, I'm an English college student from Spain and I love your accent.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And adds another, region to our NYPP map of people.
We're gonna conquer the world one day. It's
hell
NYPP, yeah! The NYPP empire. Let's keep it.
It is indeed. So yeah, a very, very good question, and probably the thing I'm the most skeptical about concerning the Xenoblade sequel. He's right in the fact that Xenoblade is a very plot-focused game. The narrative is very strong there, and of course the main character, Shulk, is central to that and is a key participating character. So when it comes to the idea of having a non-speaking main character, it does scare me a little bit, because I did, connect a lot to those characters in Xenoblade, and I really enjoyed them, and I thought they were great, and the plot is one of my favorite aspects of it. It's one of those things that really propelled me forward to actually finish it in the end. So I am a little bit afraid there, because I think it may have some implications for what will happen later on within the story. And, when they were showing it off, it was kind of like, you're making your guy and he kind of steps out and he's almost kind of blank-faced and not really responding that much. And that does worry me. So I am a little bit wary, and I'm hoping that they find some way of kind of getting around that if they are doing it. I mean, there are a lot of games which have a non-speaking main character. Skyrim is like that, and I think
Zelda,
the original BioShock is like that. Those games, great plots, great storylines, but I feel like this is a series where some of its core tenets lie in the main characters and their role in the overall arching narrative. And so, yeah, it's something that I'm afraid of, to be certain. And, it would be really cool if it was like Fire Emblem Awakening, because for sure, you do get to create your own character, but they are their own character in the story. They have a role to play, they have a backstory, and they actually are pretty central to the plot. So yeah, I feel your concern there, and I echo the sentiment. So yeah, there you go. I guess let's hope something happens on that front. All right. Anything else here, Bally, or are we gonna zoom right into our last segment?
I think we're just gonna wrap up the emails for this week, I'm afraid.
Well, would you tell the kind people where they can send them if they want to be read on the show?
They can send their very kind emails, and nasty ones if that's what you choose, to NYPPQuestions@gmail.com. And remember to tell us where you're from. It's really exciting, and I'm sure the other listeners will be interested to find out where everyone's from. So yeah, keep them coming.
Excellent. Well, do not go anywhere, because we will be right back after this short break, and we'll be talking about the Game Boy's 25th anniversary. So don't go anywhere. Stay tuned. We'll be back in a sec.
Wasn't humanly possible, but now you can have all the power and excitement of Nintendo right in the palm of your hand. Introducing Game Boy. It's portable, it's in stereo, and its games are interchangeable. Plus, Game Boy comes with the outrageous new game, Tetris. And for head-to-head competition, use the revolutionary video link and blow your opponent away. Game Boy, only from Nintendo. Now you're playing with power, portable power.
All right, we have returned for our third and final segment, and of course, as Bally mentioned at the top of the show, we are going to be talking about the little handheld, or maybe a bit larger than little handheld that could, the Game Boy, because it is the 25th anniversary of the North American release of the Game Boy, the original fat chunky one, and a lot of people are talking about it. I mean, this is the thing, a lot of the journalists and games press is based in the US, so a lot of people are going to be talking about it, even though the Game Boy didn't actually come out in Europe until September of the year after, 1990, so not quite that old in this region, but still might as well talk about it, because it's a bit of a hot topic, and it's cool to look back and reflect. So yeah, Bally, you had a Game Boy, and
I did.
And I guess we're just going to kick this segment off talking about like our first experiences, how we got our Game Boys, all that good stuff. Because you might know, as we kind of talked about, we are actually younger than the Game Boy, so there's no way we could have had one at launch in any universe. So yeah.
So I think I must have... So I was born in 91.
We both were 91.
Yes, so I must have been about... How old was I then? I must have been like 8 or 9,
right.
Which would mean I got it in probably 1999-ish. I would say I got it in 98 or 99, so I guess I was 7 or 8.
Sure.
And I didn't even know what one was. I actually was given one by my cousin who lives in Canada. She was like, "Happy birthday, Alistair," and sent over this thing. And yeah, I got this big box. It just said Game Boy on it, and I didn't even know what it was. My mum was like, "Oh my god, what have you done to him? He's gonna just play that like all the time." And she was so skeptical, like the very second it arrived in our house.
Yeah.
And it came with I don't know whether it was a tie-in game or whether it was, my cousin bought it extra, but I got a Game & Watch collection with it. So
right.
It was 5 Game & Watch games in one on the cart, and you played all these games on your Game Boy, and I played it, and I would say I wasn't overly like, oh my god, this is the most amazing thing ever. But that was initially the first game I got, and then a little while later I bought a driving game, of which the name I can't remember, or
probably something random,
yeah,
third-party thing.
And likewise, it didn't wow me. It was great fun, but it wasn't like, I don't know, it wasn't
a revelation.
It wasn't a revelation at that point. And
I mean, this was, I guess, probably for both of us, the first kind of console of any description that we owned. I mean, do you remember playing any games at all before the Game Boy, or was this really the first introduction? Like, had you played stuff on PC when you were younger?
I think this birthday present of the Game Boy sent over from Canada was definitely before I even picked up any like PC games, because I used to have a few PC games around the same time, but I'd say that was slightly after.
Okay.
So yeah, those were my first 2 games, like I said, the racing game and the Game & Watch collection. And then later was Pokemon.
Right.
Which came out in Europe in 98.
I think 99 was Europe.
99.
I believe
so. Yeah, I bought Pokemon Blue, and I played a lot of it. This was the first like big game that I played a lot of. And
right.
I'll admit, I've never even completed Pokemon Red and Blue.
Have you not?
I really haven't.
Holy
honestly.
crap! I had no idea. I
Yeah.
thought you did finish it.
I don't know why, but yeah, I just never completed it. I remember you and Ali T then later got Game Boy Colors.
Right.
And I feel like the Game Boy Color came out at a very similar time to Pokemon
Right.
in
Well, I mean, a
Europe.
lot of people talk about the Game Boy in two eras. It was the BP and AP, which stands for before Pokemon and after Pokemon. And I think, yeah, definitely there was this transition between those games coming out where there were a lot more simple, very kind of basic Game Boy games happening. And then Pokemon came out and things started to get much more technical and advanced, and much more complicated game concepts were being played on the Game Boy, and things really kicked off there. And yeah, I mean, Pokemon came out in October of '99 in Europe. I believe it was a whole year after the American release. Thank God it's not that bad these days. I mean, sometimes it is, the Xenoblade situation and everything. And I mean, Professor Layton versus Phoenix Wright is about 6 months away, from the European launch for the Americans. But thankfully, it's not as bad as it used to be, because, man, it took a long time. But I mean, it wasn't generally that bad for the Game Boy era, because, we could potentially import if we wanted, thanks to it being region free, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I didn't really take advantage of that at the time at all. Well,
the way you would do it, really.
Exactly. No, my Game Boy was Canadian, but I just didn't realize it at the time. I never even had the concept of region locking in my head.
Yeah.
So it had been sent over and was Canadian, definitely. So yeah, I guess that would have been a real kick in the balls had she sent it over and none
not
of the
worked
games
with anything.
I bought would work. Yeah. So
yeah. Well, yeah. So you had that Game Boy for the longest time. And did you upgrade to a color at some point?
I did upgrade, and when I upgraded, I feel like I bought Red and Yellow, Pokemon Red and Yellow, as well as Mario Tennis and a Spider-Man game, I remember. But Mario Tennis was probably the main Game Boy Color game I played. And I feel like I got that at the same time as you.
And I think that was quite a good game, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, it's a very good game. Very good game. I feel like you got your Game Boy Color around the same time as I did.
Right, well, my history with Game Boy is somewhat different, because I never owned the original Chunky Monkey. I wasn't in on the ground floor. The first Game Boy I had was a color, and we'll get to that story in a bit. But I mean, first of all, my first real experience with the Game Boy was my cousins, because they had one. They had an old one. And one of the first games I played on the system was Mario Land 2. Still to this day, one of the most nostalgic games for me, and one of my favorite games of all time. Of course, last show we played some music from that on the jukebox segment, which is just one of those tunes that will probably never leave my head. And a fantastic game. I loved playing it, but I never had a system. I never could play. I did, at one point from a friend who, when we were much younger at school, I borrowed a Game Boy and it had Tetris on it, and so I played Tetris, and that was my first experience with that game. I'd never heard of it before. I didn't know what it was, but I tried it and it was kind of cool. I was probably terrible at it. I can't really remember playing it that much, but that was another way I kind of got introduced. And then I do believe that you lent me your Game Boy at some point with a Pokemon game. Yeah, I remember I didn't have one, and I came around and you let me borrow it for a while with a Pokemon game. I took it away and I played for a bit with it, and and it wasn't probably until '99 for me when Pokemon was hitting big and the trading. I mean, really the first thing that I got into regarding Pokemon was the trading card game, and a lot of people did at school, and the anime was happening. It was a huge deal at the time. I didn't actually get the game until a little bit later, but when I did get it, it was as a result of my mum buying a birthday present for my sister. And it's really weird, because the first video game console in our house was not bought for me. It was bought for my sister. So a purple Game Boy was something that she got for her, maybe her 6th birthday or something. Maybe even she was 5 years old. She was very young, and my mum bought it. And quite honestly, she never used it. Like, I mean, there were some games on it that she may have tinkered with here and there, but it was very clear from a young age that she wasn't the type of person to get into video games and didn't really care for them. But I most certainly was, and Jesus Christ, I got into them a hell of a lot, and I mean, I do remember a very distinctive memory of the day after her birthday party. I woke up super early, just because I was young and I just woke up early all the time. But more specifically because I was so excited to play Pokemon Blue, because I hadn't had a chance to play it yet. I didn't get a chance the day before, because my mum had brought a game called Quest for Camelot. It was based on some movie. It was a licensed tie-in game. It actually ended up being quite interesting, and thinking back on it now, it was very Zelda-inspired. It was like a top-down Link's Awakening style game. It was kind of cool, and I kind of think about sometimes going back to it and seeing if I could go through and actually play it properly, because I couldn't at the time. I had no idea what I was doing. But so that was something that she was playing a little bit the day before. But I woke up the next morning, went into my grandparents' bathroom, sat on the floor, and just just played Pokemon Blue from the beginning, and for at least 2 hours, just before anyone else woke up. I got up like 6 a.m. and just sat there, and really that was it. I was hooked into the system from that point, and it became really for me the Pokemon machine, because aside from a couple random licensed games, that was the blood of that machine, and that was what I used it for. And I feel like a similar thing applies to you to some degree.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I wasn't actually as into Pokemon as you and Ali T were at the time, and I feel like I got into the series far more so with Pokemon Gold and Silver.
Yeah, definitely.
Which were also Game Boy games, but I clearly remember, and my mum does never shut up with this story. Whenever she talks about me as a gamer when I was younger, she always talks about you and me, and we said when we were going to the David Lloyd Fitness Club when we were much younger. This was right in the middle of the time that you're talking about, basically. We both owned Game Boy Colors. We were both playing a lot of Pokemon on them. We'd come round to each other's houses. This was by the time Gold and Silver was out, I should say. And we would be doing constant mystery gifts with each other via the Game Boy Color infrared.
I mean, it was every single time we met up, we would do every single combination possible. Yeah. My gold version with your gold version, my gold version with your silver, my gold with your crystal, my own crystal with my own crystal.
So we both owned all three. But my mum never shuts up about how my mum doesn't drive. So we were getting a taxi to the David Lloyd Club, and we were both in the taxi with a link cable attached. And then once the taxi journey was over, we walked about 40 meters attached via the link cable into like the main lobby at David Lloyd, just attached. Just didn't have a care in the world that anyone would stare at us like attached via cable at this point in time. And yeah, it was. And then my mum just goes, "Hurry up and save! Come on, we need to go in for a swim or whatever." And we're like, "Okay."
The old mum trick of thinking that you can save any time doesn't
Exactly.
work like that. Doesn't work like that.
Exactly. So we eventually
frustrating.
saved, and we put the link cable away for another time, and we went on for our swim.
I mean, that was the thing with Game Boy a lot of the time. It's like, Mum, you don't understand. You can't save in a battle. God, come on. You should know this shit by now. And
Exactly.
and that's pretty funny. And I think that's an interesting thing, when the generation after us comes up, is like, we have grown up with this stuff. We know when you can save. You can't bullshit us.
Exactly.
We have the experience.
Yeah.
So that's a funny thing, I think, for the future. But
And just the idea of being linked up by a link cable.
it was pretty revolutionary, right?
It was revolutionary at the time, and now it would be mad for two people to be playing a multiplayer game via link cable.
Yeah, physically attached.
Yeah, it's hilarious, but anyway. Yeah.
And I mean, talking about the link cable, it kind of leads nicely into a discussion of the accessories that came around with Game Boy, because I feel like there were quite a lot of them. And a lot of them were kind of there to prop up some of the misgivings of the hardware.
Yes.
The major one being the lack of any sort of backlight or front light. meaning that if you wanted to play the Game Boy and you didn't have a light source, it was a tough situation, you know. And many times when I was on journeys, you know, driving in the car from London to Edinburgh, as so often we do, and we did when I was younger, having no ability to do so because it was so dark, and that sucked.
I distinctly remember my grandparents used to live in Kinghorn, which is about an hour, 45 minutes to an hour's drive from my house in Edinburgh. And I distinctly, and every time we came back from my grandparents, even, well, I guess not midsummer, but sort of autumn time, it would get dark incredibly early in Scotland. So I actually owned, I think my mum bought me it's a magnifying glass and a light all in one, and it was green, the same shade as my Game Boy Color, and it slotted onto the Game Boy and folded down, so it was like quite sleek. Well, as sleek as it was back then.
right.
Not nothing compared to like a DS these days, but
sure.
It was quite sleek for the time. And then when you wanted to play, you'd flip it up, it'd be magnified. And you could turn on a light that would shine on the screen, but not directly on the screen, so you didn't have the reflection of the light bulb.
Right.
And I remember getting right through Mario Tennis on the Game Boy Color, and I was like in the final match against Mario. It's like a full 5-set match. And I just remember plugging in, like, because it had a headphone jack, the Game Boy Color.
Yeah.
And I had like a headset, and I plugged in my headphones, and just sat there in pitch black in the back of the car with this light turned on, just with the volume turned on full with the amazing Mario Tennis music, and I just took on Mario just on the journey back. And it's just the idea of being able to do that at that point in time. I'd never done anything like that before, and yeah, it's a really good game, and just an accessory that was clunky as hell in some ways, but in the end actually worked.
It did the job, right? And that's all you needed it. That's all you needed it for. And I mean, I had a similar thing. I'm not sure whether I ever got the thing that combined the two, but I did have a magnifying implement as well as a light. My light was a lot less effective because a lot of the time it would cover up the screen. It was like it plugged into the area where the link cable would go, and kind of was a bendy. It was like a snake. It was like in the shape of a snake, and it would bend over the top.
I had one like that as well.
Right, yeah, and so you'd bend over the top, and it would shine the light on the screen. I mean, it was really clunky and a bad way of implementing it.
But you're right, I remember yours actually had like a little plastic snake head on it. It was like golden or silver, you know, it was golden. And like the funny thing about these, my light, I had a green light as well, a spindly one as well as my big magnifying one. I had I could swap between the two depending on whether I wanted it magnified or not, which was nice. But the funny thing about the windy light that attached in through the link cable slot is that because it went through the link cable slot, it added on its own link cable slot, so you could be lit up and have a link cable in at the same time. Yeah. It's just like this clunky design that allowed you to do multiple things at once. I thought it was so smart at the time, and looking back, it's just hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, it was a fun time. Lots of things there that they really had to do because just the initial design of the Game Boy didn't allow for that kind of thing. And you know, it being a portable device, you kind of wanted it all places at all times, and it didn't really allow for that, unfortunately. But hey, people were there to provide all these third-party knockoff things that we used to kind of buffer it. So
other than Pokemon, what would you say were some of your favorite games, and sort of what games did you get throughout the life cycle of the Game Boy?
Well, I mean, as I said, it was very Pokemon-centric, and I mean, picking up on that thread, it's not necessarily a main series one, but Pokemon Pinball is one of the best Game Boy games out there, bar none. Not only because it actually implemented a really cool way of playing this, usual massive arcade thing on the go, but also it included a very, very interesting feature that made the cartridge giant, and that was, of course, the Rumble Pack, which I thought was fantastic because it gave you this force feedback into the handheld, that you would get on controllers, but never before on a handheld, and I really appreciated that.
I remember playing because when I got Pokemon Pinball, I had the Game Boy Color, so I'd play it on the Game Boy Color, and when it buzzed, it vibrated. It was quite a hefty vibration, and then I remember plugging it into my original Classic as well, just to give it a go, and yeah, with the rumble on the Classic, because the Classic was so large, it barely rumbled at all, and I thought, well,
Yeah.
this is hopeless.
I can imagine
why
that.
why would it work for that? But yeah. The other Pokemon game that I got and enjoyed a lot at the time was the trading card game, The
Right.
Game.
Yeah.
And really well designed game. This is definitely a game I'm keen on picking up on the Virtual Console, as I know it's just come out.
Yeah.
And just really great design, really great ability to deck build. You could have I think you could have 5 decks on the go at one time, and you'd have a card collection where you could easily look through all the cards and check out what Pokemon have what moves, etc. And to be able to do that on a Game Boy handheld, without having any Pokemon cards, just all on this game, I found incredible. And like the ability to just battle, like that was the most tricky thing about the trading card game is, I mean, we only got into the actual battle mechanics a bit later.
Yeah, definitely.
But
We're just
like
collecting to begin with.
exactly, we were just collecting, and it was like so. Even collecting at the time was just so much fun. But
Yeah.
it's the way that it sort of coincided with the Game Boy massively. But yeah, it's a really good game.
And the cool thing about that game, talking about saving whenever you wanted, or your mum thinking
Yeah.
you could, you literally could in that game. You could switch it off, and it would, no matter what, it would boot right back up. Revolutionary at the time. I remember talking with you about it. It's like, oh my god, you can turn it off and it just saves.
Yeah.
It's like, what craziness?
Mum's is like, tea time! Like, okay, switch
Yep.
it off. And she's like, whoa, you came so quick. I'm so unused to that. What happened? Like, oh, I got this new game, Mum. It switches off at the right time.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, and the other games that I played was stuff like very much licensed stuff. Sabrina the Teenage Witch, the cartoon show, the game, which surprisingly was actually kind of robust.
What a classic.
You say that, and there is a thick layer of sarcasm, but beneath that, I think it actually was a pretty fun game. I actually finished it, which is something I can't really say about a lot of games in that era.
I can't believe you yeah, I mean, I never finished any games at that point in time, even Pokemon, which is embarrassing. But
And the thing about that is it was run on a password system, so you would have to remember the password, and the password was based on faces of the characters. So it's like Sabrina, her cat, her boyfriend or whatever, and her mom or her aunts or whatever.
God.
So it was like you have to remember which combination of faces. It was a bit of a mess, but
some of the more interesting Game Boy games I owned that I remember were the Monsters Inc., as in like the official
movie
game for
tie-in,
Game Boy
yeah.
Color. That was kind of bad.
Yeah.
I owned a James Bond game on the original Game Boy. It was a top-down shooter.
oh wow,
Which was interesting. I got stuck so quickly though, and that was the days before I'd even used the internet. So
Yeah.
it was kind of just like, well, I'm stuck. Never mind.
yeah. Just
I'll
throw that
try
game
again
out.
one day. Yeah, exactly. And another funny story I should mention, and I didn't actually play much of this game, but I really do want to and download it on the Virtual Console, was I was on holiday, and we had like a villa in the Highlands, and we went out for some lunch while the cleaner came. And when we got back, the cleaner said that she'd discovered this Game Boy game down the back of the sofa, and it was a Game Boy Color game. It was The Legend of Zelda: Oracle of Ages.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'd never even played Zelda at this point in time. I was so shocked that they'd actually found a Game Boy game just down the back of a sofa, and I felt sorry for whoever it was before, but
it's mine
but
now!
it's mine now! And they can suck it. But yeah, so I've played about an hour of that game a very, very long time ago, but it's definitely something I need to try out and sort of rounded my collection out a bit.
Sure, and I mean, talking about that, we can kind of segue into the Virtual Console these days on 3DS and games that you have intentions of playing, because they're now very readily available, and at this point in time, we have much greater ability to play them. I personally have already played a few Game Boy Virtual Console games. I don't think you've picked any up, Bally, but
No,
I
I've not
have
yet.
Mario Land 2 and the first two Wario Land games, the second of which I'm actually planning on playing for the next kind of couple of weeks. So that is some stuff that I kind of went back through. I'd never played the Wario Land games before, and I've now played a pretty good amount of them, and it's a really interesting series, and it's really interesting to go back to. I want to go back to the Zelda games too. What are the ones you think, Bally, that you'd probably go ahead and download from Virtual Console?
Definitely the Pokemon trading card game, even though I already own it, because the batteries on I talked about this the other time, but the batteries on these Game Boy cartridges just run out, and it means
Right.
you can't save your game.
Yeah.
So I'd
yeah.
probably pick up Oracle of Ages or Seasons. Pokemon trading card game, like I said. I'd love to play 6 Golden Coins Super Mario Land 2 again. I'd like to try the Wario Land games, actually. Yeah, I need to try those. I'm going to keep going with my Metroid streak at some point, but Metroid 2 is one I will probably play eventually in a very long time.
Yeah.
Because I know that it has some mixed opinions, and
Yeah.
apparently it's an incredibly tough game.
I mean, there's also Link's Awakening, which was the first kind of
Yes.
Nintendo-published Zelda game on handheld, and I think that's definitely one that a lot of people hold in high regard.
Yeah.
So that's one to go back to. And for me, maybe like some Mega Man games. I've heard recently on RFN about Mega Man 5 on Game Boy Virtual Console, which apparently is really good, and that's something I might check out, of course, because I'm kind of intending on going on a bit of a Mega Man streak at some point, like your Metroid one, and kind of burning through a lot of those, because they're a lot of fun mechanically, and I'm really down for that sort of stuff. So
it's the way that at the time when the Game Boy was out, we had no recollection of what was good, what was bad. We were suckers for the third party stuff to some extent. Not that third party is bad, but third party in the sense of movie tie-in games, and just kind of, it's nice to have the Virtual Console here now, so we can go back and say, actually, these are some really classic games we never got to play, because I just kind of stumbled upon games like Oracle of Ages, Super Mario Land 1 and 2. I never bought any of those. They were both discovered down the back of a couch, or like I said on the previous episode, I think. My mum's cousin's son just basically said, "Here, I don't play them anymore. Have these games." So
yeah.
it was just, it's weird how now I basically read reviews. I know what I like. I know what games I think are going to be good, what games are going to be bad, and I'm better at judging what to buy, what not to buy. At that point in time, it was just
It was the Wild West,
play what
really.
you're given. Yeah, it was pretty crazy. And obviously everyone owned Pokemon, and that was a fantastic game by all accounts. So, it was a weird time.
Certainly. But hey, I think we got a lot of fun out of that era, regardless of all that stuff, It was very much an introduction to the world of gaming, and Game Boy as an introduction, you couldn't get much better, to be honest. Like, there was some fantastic stuff there, and really pulled us in. So there you go. I think that's probably going to close us out here for the show. But hey, if you enjoyed the segment, let us know about your experiences with the Game Boy. We'd love to hear from you, and of course you can email all of those things to our email address, which is Bally.
NYPPQuestions@gmail.com. We've got quite a few emails, but we're going to need more, so keep them coming.
Send them through. We love hearing from you, and keep that good work up. Of course, if you want to know what's going on during the breaks between our shows, then you of course follow us on the social media. Twitter, I am at Lordnbz on Twitter. I am Lordnbz on Miiverse as well, and maybe gonna go through some stuff on there and post a bit more, but the stuff I have lined up for the future may not be amenable to that. Although playing Wario Land 2 on Virtual Console and 3DS, I can certainly post a bit about that, so that could be cool. What about you, Bally?
I am at Ballyman91. That's BALLYMAN91, and that is also my name on Miiverse as well as Twitter. I've been posting quite a lot on Twitter recently, actually. I'm past 1,000 tweets, which is
wow! Congratulations!
quite a lot for me. Yeah. So
I'm closing in on the 15,000 mark. So.
I'm catching up. Don't worry.
Yeah, yes, one day.
One day I'm gonna be older than you. So yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Follow me on there.
All right, fantastic. You can review us, of course, on iTunes. Rate and review us, and that is really appreciated. We haven't had any ones recently, so if you would like us to, talk about your review on the show and read it out, that's a really cool way of getting some of your words on here. So you can go ahead and do that, and we really do appreciate it because it means that more people can find us and helps everything out. But I think that is pretty much going to be it for today. So thank you once again for listening. Thank you for sticking with us for these 20 episodes. Been quite a while, but we're going to continue with this podcast train. It's not stopping anytime soon.
Onwards and upwards.
Indeed. So we will catch you in a couple of weeks' time with all the latest and greatest from ourselves. Till then, thank you very much for listening. Goodbye.
Bye. So I had like another running issue yesterday.
Oh no, here we go.
And I was literally at Westminster, and I'm
Okay.
just like, oh my god, I need to lose so bad. I can't run anymore. Like, it was my own fault. I had 4 samosas for lunch. 4 lamb samosas, and I was like, before my run, I was like, right, I'll go to the loo before my run. It'll all be fine. I tried, nothing happened. I was like, right, fine, it's not digested. I'll be absolutely fine. I ran. I was like almost 6 to 8k into my run.
Yeah.
And I was literally at the halfway point, so I was about 6 to 8k away from home, and I stupidly didn't bring like any money or an Oyster card or anything.
No!
And I was just like, God, I really, really need to loo. It was a horrible feeling, and like it hit me so suddenly as well.
Yeah.
And then I basically walked about 4 kilometers because I couldn't run. It was too painful to run. I had
Jesus
to walk,
Christ.
so it took ages to like get anywhere. Yeah. So anyway, I just like walked into this restaurant and just went straight to the loo. Just didn't care. Everyone was staring at me like, "What the hell is that?"
And then he just
I'm
walked
wearing
out.
like a running vest and running shorts and running shoes, and then I
Yeah.
just went in the loo, took a shit, and just walked out, and just ran the rest home.
Oh dear.
Fuck the world. Just
man.
do it.
You should have just found a bush. That's easy, right?
In central London, like,
There are parks. They have green now.
that would have been. I would have done that in a split second in Scotland.
Yeah.
Because my running routes in Scotland are always near
Bushes.
near nature. But
Well,
yeah.
Scotland is more near nature anyway, isn't it? So
Yeah, true. But oh my, horrible situation.
I hate stuff like that. I can't deal with that.
Yeah, and
Too much.
God. Anyway,
Right. Well, that's great.
that was a great story. I
Thanks for that.
hope you liked it. And they come at you hard, they come at you fast, they come up behind you.